Daf Yomi, Tractate Menachot, page 23a, top of the page. Amaravi, Kasover Yehuda Kol Shu Min B'Minoi V'Davar Acher, Salages Minoi Kemin Sheinoi V'Sheina Minoi, Rabbi Alav Lumi Batelo. Rava said, Rabbi Yehuda holds that in the case of any mixture that consists of a substance in contact with the same type of substance as well as another type of substance, the halakha is to disregard the same substance, considering it as though it were not there. And in the event that the different type of substance is more than the first substance, the different substance nullifies the first substance. In the case of the Mishnah here, the handful of the meal offering is mixed with the other types of meal offerings that comprise greater quantities of oil. The oil of the handful is disregarded, and the flour of the handful, which is present in greater quantities than the oil of the other meal offering that is absorbed in it, nullifies this oil of the other meal offering. That oil is now considered to be one with the oil of the handful, and therefore the oil of the handful is increased, and the handful is unfit. Itmal. It was stated, Koi mitzvah minchas choite shishimnoi, Rabbi Yochanan Omer, Pasul, Beresh Lakish Omar, Hu Atzmo Mishach Shecho, Bishiare Alog Umalehu. It was stated that the Amoraim disagree with regard to the halakha, where one added oil to the handful that is removed from the meal offering of a sinner, which does not include oil. Rabbi Yochanan says it is unfit, and Reish Lakish says the halakha of the meal offering itself is to wipe it, ab initio. In the remainder of the log of oil, that remains in the vessels that were used previously for other meal offerings, and the priest then brings it up and burns it on the altar. This is done so that the meal offering will not be completely dry. V'achsiv lo yosim aleha shemen v'lo yitan aleha levoino ahu shelo yikva la shemen kechavroteha. The Gemara asks, but isn't it written, with regard to the meal offering of a sinner, he shall put no oil upon it, neither shall he put any frankincense on it. Leviticus 5:11. How then can any oil be added? The Gemara answers, that verse teaches that one should not designate oil for it as one designates oil for the other meal offerings, but the meal offering of a sinner is not rendered unfit by the addition of a small amount of oil. Eser Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish Chorev Shenitarev Bivalul Yakriv. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Lo Yakriv Ma'ilav Kometz Minchas Choite Dis Orev Koimetz Minchas Nidovo. Rabbi Yochanan raised an objection to Reish Lakish from a Braita. Tosefta 4:4. In the case of a dry meal offering that was intermingled with a meal offering that was mixed with oil, the priest shall sacrifice it. Rabbi Yehuda says the priest shall not sacrifice it. What? Is the Braita not referring to a handful of the meal offering of a sinner that was intermingled with a handful of a voluntary meal offering, demonstrating that the oil invalidates the handful of a meal offering of a sinner? Lo. Minchas porim ve'elim ke minchas kivosim. Reish Lakish responded, no. The Braita is referring to the meal offering that accompanies the libations brought with the offerings of bulls or rams, for which 2 log of oil is mixed with 1/10 of an ephah of flour that became intermingled with the meal offering that accompanies the libations brought with the offering of sheep, for which 3 log of oil is mixed with 1/10 of an ephah of flour, as the former is considered dry relative to the latter. והבהדיה קטני לה. מנחס פורים ומנחס כבוסים. וחורב שנסעורת בבולול יקרב. רבי יהודה אומר, לא יקרב, פירוש שכה מפרש לה. Rabbi Yochanan objected, but another brayta teaches this explicitly as a separate halacha with regard to the meal offering that accompanies the offerings of bulls or rams that became intermingled with the meal offering that accompanies the offering of sheep, and a dry meal offering that was intermingled with a meal offering that was mixed with oil. The meal offering shall be sacrificed. Rabbi Yehuda says it shall not be sacrificed. Therefore, the latter case must be referring to other meal offerings. Reish Lakish responded, the latter clause is explaining the first clause of the Braita, teaching that the reason one may not offer a meal offering that accompanies bulls and rams that was intermingled with the meal offering that accompanies sheep is because one may not offer a dry offering that was intermingled with one that is mixed with oil. Boirobo koi mitz shemitzo shamno al gabi eitzim mahu chibure oilin ke oilin damu oilav ke oilin damu Amar le Rabbi Lavashi laphainu de Rabbi Yochanan v'Reish Lakish. Rava raises a dilemma in the case of a handful whose oil the priest squeezed onto the wood, and only afterward he placed the handful on the wood to be burned. What is the halacha? Are substances that are contiguous to items that ascend upon the altar considered to be as part of the items that ascend upon the altar, in which case the oil that was absorbed into the wood and is contiguous to the handful of the meal offering is considered part of the handful, or are they not considered to be as part of the items that ascend upon the altar, and the oil is not viewed as part of the handful, and therefore the handful is missing oil? Ravina said to Rashi, is this not the same disagreement as the dispute between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish? Dietmar, as it was stated, Amala Ever she'en bo kezayis, ve'etzim mashlimu lichezayis. Rabbi Yochanan Omar Chayav Reish Lakish Amar Patel. It was stated with regard to one who offers up outside the temple courtyard a limb that contains less than an olive bulk of meat, but the offering's bone completes the measure of the offering to an olive bulk. Rabbi Yochanan says he is liable. Reish Lakish says he exempt. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Chayav Chibure Oilin Koilin Damu, Reish Lakish Amar Patel Chibure Oilin Lav Koilin Damu. Rabbi Yochanan says that one is liable because he holds that substances that are contiguous to items that ascend upon the altar are considered to be part of the item that ascend upon the altar. Therefore, the measure of the bone added to the measure of the meat, resulting in a total measure of an olive bulk, which is the measure that determines liability. And Reish Lakish says that one is exempt because he holds that substances that are contiguous to items that ascend upon the altar are not considered to be part of the items that ascend upon the altar. Since less than an olive bulk of meat was sacrificed, he is not liable. Rabbi Yochanan Chosam Ela Be'etzem De Bina De Basaru Amalai De La B'mina De Koim Tzula. Rashi responded, Rava's dilemma can be raised according to Rabbi Yochanan. Rava's dilemma can be raised according to Reish Lakish. The circumstances in their dispute are not the same as in Rava's dilemma, so their opinions in that case may not be applicable to this one. Rashi elaborates, the dilemma can be raised. Very nice. The dilemma can be raised according to Rabbi Yochanan, even though he holds that the bone is considered to be part of the meat to complete the measure of an olive bulk. Perhaps Rabbi Yochanan says his opinion only there in the case of a bone, because the bone is the same type as the meat, meaning it is from the same animal, and is therefore considered to be part of the sacrificial meat. But in this case of oil, which is not the same type of a handful, it's not considered to be part of the handful, even if it is contiguous to it. Oy dilma, maybe. Afilu Reish Lakish lo kama el be'etzem devar mifarashu, גם יפרשו, ויפריש לה מצווה להדורת. אבל שמן דלה בה מפרשו לה, I think this would be the 234th teku in the Babylonian Talmud. Right? I just made it today. I had a few tekus done up until I had including 233, and I just made the heading for the 234th, and it looks like it was appropriate. Very nice. So this will be recorded in the tekus, I think. Yeah. Right. Or just print it. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Let's continue. So basically, we're asking, or perhaps even according to Reish Lakish, he says his ruling only in the case of the bone, teaching that it does not add to the quantity of the meat. The reason is that the bone is able to be separated from the meat, and if it is separated, there is no mitzvah to return it into the fire. Therefore, he views it as a distinct from the meat. But in this case of oil, which is not able to be separated from the handful of the meal offering, as it must be burned together with the handful, he will not hold that the oil is viewed as separate from the handful. Or perhaps there's no difference between the case of the bone and the case of the oil. And Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish would have the same opinions respectively in both cases. And the Gemara comments, this dilemma shall stand unresolved. The dilemma of whether you can ask it according to Reish Lakish or Rabbi Yochanan, that's also a dilemma. Will Elijah actually answer all of these? We'll see. Maybe the Messiah will. Okay, that concludes the Talmud for that portion. And the Mishnah. Sagt der Mishnah stehen Menachot, shlo nikmitzu v'nit ara v'zo b'zo. Im yochlik mos b'zo, b'pnei atzmam b'zo b'pnei atzmam k'shei rois. Yimla b'su lois. In the case of two meal offerings from which a handful was not removed, and that was were intermingled with each other. If the priest can remove a handful from this meal offering by itself and a handful from that offering by itself, they are fit meal offerings. But if not, they're unfit, as the handful of each meal offering must be taken from its original source. Comment shita mincha shlo nikmitza lo yaktir v'im hiktir zo shenikmitza olas lebalim v'zo shelo nikmitza lo olas lebalim. In the case of a handful that was intermingled with a meal offering from which a handful was not removed, the priest should not burn the mixture on the altar. And if he burned it, this meal offering from which the handful was taken satisfies the obligation of the owner. But that meal offering from which the handful was not taken does not satisfy the obligation of the owner. Nisorev kumsa bishoreho or bishoreho shel chaverto lo yaktir vim hiktir alas libalim. If after it was removed, its handful was intermingled with its remainder, or with the remainder of another meal offering, the priest should not burn the mixture on the altar. But if he burned it, it satisfies the obligation of the owner. That's the Mishnah. Now for the Talmud. Zog the Helik Talmud on Mochizda, Nevela betelo b'shchuto she'i efshar l'shchuto she'dei also nevelo. Rav Chizda says the meat of an unslaughtered animal carcass is nullified in a larger quantity of meat of a slaughtered animal. A properly slaughtered animal, that would be. Although meat from a carcass generally imparts impurity if one touches the mixture of the two meats, he does not become ritually impure, as the carcass meat is considered a different type of substance from the slaughtered animal and is therefore nullified. This is not considered a mixture that comprises a substance in contact with the same type of substance, because meat from a slaughtered animal cannot sustain the status of a carcass. It cannot attain the status of a carcass, and it is therefore viewed as a different type of substance. By contrast, if meat of a slaughtered animal became intermingled with a larger quantity of meat of an animal carcass, the meat of the slaughtered animal is not nullified in a larger quantity of meat of the carcass, as it is possible for a carcass to attain the status of a slaughtered animal with regard to the lachlan of ritual impurity, as it can lose its ability to transmit ritual impurity. This is because when a carcass rots to the extent that it is no longer edible, it loses its impure status. The halacha that the carcass meat has the ability to attain the ritually pure status of meat of a slaughtered animal renders the two meats as the same type of substance, and the mixture retains its status of intermingled carcass meat and meat of a slaughtered animal. ורבי חנין אומר כל שאפשר להיות כמוהו אינו בטל, כל שאי אפשר לו להיות כמוהו בטל. And Rabbi Chanina says the opposite. Any small quantity of an item that can possibly become like the item that is present in larger quantities is not nullified when the two are intermingled. But any small quantity of an item that cannot possibly become like the item that is present in larger quantities is nullified in a larger quantity. Accordingly, a small quantity of meat of a slaughtered animal is nullified in a larger quantity of unslaughtered animal carcass meat, since the meat of a slaughtered animal cannot become like the animal carcass meat, but a small quantity of animal carcass meat is not nullified in a larger quantity of meat of a slaughtered animal, since it can lose its impure status and become akin to the meat of a slaughtered animal. Ali ben Aman, Ali ben Rabbanon, O Amri Oilin Hu Telo Bivati Hadadi Avol Min Bemiloi Botel. The Gemara asks, in accordance with whose opinion do Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Chizda state their opinions? If their opinions are in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, this is difficult. Didn't the rabbis say that it is in the case of a mixture of items that is sent to the altar that the different components of the mixture do not nullify one another? But otherwise, the substance in contact with the same type of substance is nullified. Therefore, in any case where meat of slaughtered animal becomes intermingled with unslaughtered animal carcass meat, a smaller quantity is nullified in a larger quantity. Yehuda. Turning now to 23b. If their opinions are in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that the blood of an offering is not nullified in the blood of a non-sacred animal because the two are the same type of substance, this is difficult. But, turning to 23b, Rabbi Yehuda follows the appearance of the item in determining whether the two items are the same type of substance, and therefore this meat of a slaughtered animal and that meat of an unslaughtered carcass are viewed as a substance in contact with the same type of substance, since their appearance are identical and neither one nullifies the other. Okay, continuing. Bezrat Hashem in the next video.